assuming this is credits. Alright. I'm assuming this is credits. Do I get mouse movement? I do not. This will be a little awkward because I can't Alt-Tab. But, well, yeah, can't Alt-Tab. But yeah. Ys 9. Monstrum Nox has been conquered. I guess I gotta say, before my overall thoughts, this was a viewer requested game by Mr. JRPG. So, want to throw it out there. Thank you, Mr. JRPG, for, spending your hard-earned channel points and, throwing another video game my way to play. And for my overall thoughts, I did not really enjoy this game. Probably very, very easy to pick out this time around. I felt like I was very, very critical throughout the entire game. And I even went as far. I mean, like this isn't necessarily my fault per se, but I even went as far to skip like dialogue and like events and things like that for the side quests, just because they're really getting in the way and whatnot. There were just a lot of things about this game that I didn't like, and they like force you to do them, and that wasn't a fun experience for me. So I had a pretty tough time with several things. I also picked a really good time to stop playing the Ys games, because like Ys 8 for me, I rewatched my thoughts on it, and I thought that game was okay. It didn't do enough to revitalize my interest in the Ys franchise, but like it wasn't terrible or anything like that. And I think if I went on to play Ys 9 after Ys 8, within like a month or two or something like that, I would have just been incredibly salty and all that other crazy stuff, because I'm not really enjoying those particular aspects. So kind of glad that I stopped when I did. It was a good cap off point, I suppose, of like, you know what, the Ys franchise, it's over and done with for me. And then Mr. JRPG had other plans. I would definitely consider, or this is definitely one of the bottom of the list Ys games for me, in the same area as Ys Memories of Celceta and Ys 7. I think this game just takes it upon itself to include things that I didn't particularly like from other Ys games, and kind of made them more prevalent, I suppose. That might not be the word that I want to go with for it, but it didn't dial things back of the things that I didn't like. And then one thing that I thought of last night that really kind of struck a chord with me is, what is Ys 9's identity? What defines Ys 9? And this was something that I kind of struggle to uncover for myself. It's like, what about it qualifies? I think this answer will be different for most people out there, and there probably isn't a right answer, but I think this might be a big factor in determining how I feel about it. Um, when I think about it, I feel as though the majority of the elements in the game are too sparse. The story is very broken up and not very prevalent. Exploration is gated by the Grimwald Nox, while the Grimwald Nox is gated by side quests. Dungeon delving, the prison is more of a delivery device rather than a defining feature. And even um, the combat doesn't feel like a defining factor. It ultimately feels like Ys 9 is constructed with a bunch of small to medium sized ideas that comprise the game. All elements have to be interacted with, but none of them were important enough to carry the game on its own. I think in a lot of games that we play in in our lifetime, they're usually games where they have like a core feature or a core aspect about those games, and that aspect carries the entire game. There may be like satellite aspects that are added on top of them, um, various other things, but there's usually a core component that drives the game. And I don't necessarily feel like this game had that for me, for my playthrough, for my experience. Um, and so that might be one of the reasons why I don't necessarily vibe with the game as much as I would like to. But, who knows? Uh, let's see. For the story, was it satisfying? Uh, I I'm gonna say no on this one. Um, there was a little hesitation there because there actually there are some aspects of it that were satisfying, but I don't think the story as a whole is satisfying. Uh, I think if I were to take this more or like further past a thought exercise, if I extracted all of the cutscenes of the story of this game that I felt were relevant and progress the story, even like a millimeter. Um, I feel like those cutscenes would probably amount to less than an hour, maybe like an hour and a half or something like that. It's not a lot, so there's just not a lot of story to go on, and in a very Falcom way, uh, they kind of backload a lot of the information of what you're looking to get at the end of the game, and I'm I'm not necessarily a fan of that. I would like to be intrigued and like brought along for the ride during the adventure, and then the end is used to like cap off what's left and beat the final boss and stuff like that. But in this case, it was just like 15 to 20 hours of vagary and little questions, and then after that it's another couple of hours of like, here's a little teaser, here's another little teaser, and then at the end it's like, here's answers to some of your questions. It's kind of like a Kingdom Hearts approach, I suppose, where they make you ask more questions than they give you answers to, and I don't particularly enjoy that approach, regrettably. So I definitely gotta say that it wasn't satisfying. Did it feel complete? This one I'm kind of on the fence of. I think I think it capped off a lot of story angles and finished things, but some of those things were introduced like at the very end of the game, and a lot of questions are still lingering in this particular game. We don't even I it's possible I missed it, but I don't even think we saw confirmation that Zola is dead. Um, it it I really wish they spent more time on the various story aspects and just kind of elaborated more on things. This whole like all the homunculi are now in their original bodies at the very end here. That you can't just hand wave that. Like that's crazy. What happened to the homunculi? Where did they go? What's going on? Why did Aprilis shoot Adel at the very beginning of the game to turn him into a monstrum? Was he being controlled, or was she being controlled by Zola? Like, I, I, I don't recall that ever being explained, and I feel like that's so important. um, let's see. Hey, no the otter. How was the pacing? Absolutely atrocious. Getting tiny bits of story sandwiched by Grimwald Knox's Knox collection, Adel prison scenes, and character recruitment has a lot of issues. Yeah, the pacing was definitely one of the worst. Um, it's because a lot of the sections they don't have any relevance to each other. Doing a Grimwald Knox is its own separate thing. And uh, doing the prison Adel scenes is its own separate thing. Us doing side quests is its own separate thing. Like nothing connects with each other. Nothing progresses one aspect so that the other aspect can do something else. Um, it's all very separated, and it feels separated. Um, it it just didn't work for me. Thoughts on the story? Within 24 hours streamed, I'm very annoyed at the approach of the story. It's really taking its time to get off the ground. The caginess of the characters with knowledge certainly doesn't help. This is this is just a Falcom thing, I guess. They like their cagey characters, and they like uh, I guess a variation of the carrot on the stick approach, where they just kind of like drag things out a lot more. The game hides information as if the reveal will be huge and world shattering, when in reality the revelations will most likely not be. I'm gonna go ahead and just throw it out there that I think the biggest and craziest reveal that this game had was Shadowlard being a homunculus. I think that is a cool reveal that ultimately falls flat. But um like they could have played that up much more than they did. Parks being the governor general, like that doesn't change anything. As a matter of fact, if they revealed that earlier, we could have done some stuff to try to get him installed, or try to exert his influence on the office so that we can accomplish more things in the city. Like, we could have played that up. But instead, it's just left as a reveal towards the end of the game, and it just doesn't really mean anything. Marius being the ruler of Rome. Like, cool, he's the ruler of Rome. You could have told us that earlier in the game, and you know what that would have changed? Absolutely nothing. Zola. Characters are being super cagey about Zola. And you know what that revelation did? absolutely nothing. We never met that character. So, like, why would you hide a character that we've never met until, you know, like late mid to going on the back end of the game when it's a character that doesn't mean anything to us. It just makes no sense. I don't get it. It would be so much more exciting for me, maybe not for other people, but for me, to be introduced to the villain early on, let's say within the first 5 to 10 hours. And then we have our motivation now. We need to stop this villain. And as we're moving on and we're thwarting, a plan or two here and there, we're doing our little excursions and things like that. Start to learn more about the villain. Start to learn more about their motivations as a villain. Eventually, it comes to a point where we have the ability to confront the villain, and then we can get more information and more plot development that way. Maybe that's not the end of the game. Maybe that villain escapes or something like that. It doesn't have to be that, but something occurs where maybe we have to fight the villain again later on down the line. Maybe that's when the homunculus plot thread gets revealed, and he actually had a homunculus himself, and that's where we learn that. And we're like, wait, if he's a homunculus, what does that make us? And then we go down this whole homunculus plot line. Like, there's so much potential. This game had so much potential with its story. And I think, I don't want to say it was squandered. I just think that it approached it in a in a way that doesn't give it an identity, or like there's nothing, like it's just pieces, and it's trying to leverage those pieces in these small little sections and make sure that you do them in the specific order and stuff like that, and it just doesn't flow. Dr. Noah said he did one final procedure to Anemona, so you would think he survived, but they didn't give any confirmation one way or another otherwise. I did see at the end there was a scene inside the shop, and Anemona was like a real girl. She wasn't a doll anymore, or at least she didn't look like a doll. So that seemed to me the procedure that he did. But yeah, the Zola, I feel like Zola is alive. They should have showed him at the end there. Dogi was like, I get you, but you didn't get what procedure they were talking about at all. Yeah, it was Anemona. You mean during the credit? You thought that was Aprilis? No, I'm pretty sure that was Anemona. I'm pretty sure. I'll even check. Go somewhere over here. That's a little too far. Yeah, right here. This, like, look at her eye. Well, I mean, I guess it could be. I guess it could be Aprilis. But this is not. I guess it could be Aprilis. Those eyes look like Aprilis, and then the little like hair bun in the back. But the way I don't think it's Aprilis. I think it's Home Chick Slice Anemona. But who knows? It's a little ambiguous. Aprilis dying was mega anticlimactic. Holy cow, did they not leverage that at all either? I feel like that was a big moment. I knew that Aprilis wasn't going to stay dead for long. I didn't know how she was going to come back, but she has like an affinity with the side characters have affinity with Adol, and so I knew that because Aprilis had affinity and we had not really done anything with affinity at that point, that Aprilis would come back in some capacity. Uh, wasn't expecting, homunculus. Like I knew clones and stuff like that were a thing because of the double Adols, and I might have suspected double Mariuses at that point. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I wish they played up the Aprilis dying thing. Um, it was also really awkward because like she just randomly shows up and she's like Shadowlord. Shadowlord's like Aprilis, and then he just kills her. It could have been an epic battle between the two. It would have been so much more exciting. And maybe maybe we handle the funeral. We go to the funeral and stuff like that. Stuff like that. Our character motivations are lacking as well. Why do we need to find multiple entrances into the prison when we've already found so many? If our purpose is to fight off lemurs or lemuries, how do they pronounce that again? Why do we care about Balduke Prison? This was another thing that I feel like they put so much emphasis on Balduke Prison, but they never really gave us a really good reason about why Balduke Prison was important. Like, sure, uh, they're rounding up people, they're arresting people and imprisoning them, but what does that have to do with the Monstrums? It has nothing to do with them. Why are we finding a bunch of entrances into Balduke Prison? Like, why is that important to us? I understand some aspects of the side quests where you want to infiltrate the prison and rescue certain people, but those are side quests. You don't have to do those as far as I am aware. So what's the point? And that's something that I struggled with. Um, yep, Kingdom Hearts has bad writing because of that, and Nomura's writing style is awful since it's really just him beating around the bush. Yeah. Kingdom Hearts is a very special story. With that said, Kingdom Hearts 2 is an amazing game. Absolutely amazing. I don't necessarily know if it's because of the story, but the gameplay is absolutely incredible. Speaking of gameplay, for gameplay mechanics and design, what gameplay elements stand out? The game seems to take after Ys 8 in many aspects. The Grimwald Nox is the village defense, like raid battles. Recruiting bar employees is recruiting villagers. Um, I think there's even a similar aspect of unlocking certain areas of exploration. So, Ys 9 kind of feels like a Ys 8.5 in some ways. Um, in terms of like taking elements of Ys 8 and then doing like porting them over and maybe adding some improvements or not improvements, detriments perhaps to the systems, and just trying some different things. General exploration was enjoyable. I liked seeking out azure petals, graffiti, and various landmarks. I also liked the amount of fast travel points. Games tend to be stingy regarding these, so I appreciated that there were an abundance of them, as well as some of them being healing points. I think this was really nice. A lot of games don't provide fast travel. Like fast travel kind of seems like one of those things where it's a like a taboo kind of thing where it's like, no, we don't want you to skip through our game. We want you to go through our game. We want you to see all these things that we created. And it's like, nah, man, you know, I saw it the first time. Let me go where I want. If I want to walk through the game, I'll walk through the game. So I enjoyed that. Not only were there fast travels, but they were all over the place. So and it's not like the city was that big either. So you could walk through it if you wanted to as well. Traversal was also a nice addition. Being able to glide, walk up walls, or teleport to certain locations added some nice diversity. This might actually be one of the coolest additions in any of the Ys games that I've ever played. Um, and I kind of hope that they do something with this in the future. Not that I'll probably get around to be playing any more Ys games, but um, I think being able to walk up walls and glide to various aspects of like the city and stuff like that to get collectibles and stuff like that is like super cool. You not a lot of games out there get you to think with the mindset of I can climb up this wall and get to the point that I'm looking for. And it's really cool when games allow you to have a new mindset when it comes to exploration or puzzle solving or problem solving. And I appreciate things like that. That said, forcing the player to do side quests to progress the main story is crazy. It's probably very difficult to get more crazy than that, actually. It's even worse because the side quests that I engaged in or engaged with are the typical drivel that are pointless. If you really think about it, the meaningless side quests might just be the real story. Yeah, I'm not a fan of. Let me walk that back a little bit. Side quests can be pretty cool. Sometimes there are side quests out there that are its own like separate game in a sense. They explore characters and aspects of the game that are not touched on as much in the main story. And then other times there are side quests out there that are just kind of there. They have you do something that is not relevant to anything else in the game. They have you interact with characters that are not really relevant to the game. And, for all intents and purposes, they're just kind of there to waste your time for a little while. And like the inclusion of side quests is fine, the point of them being side quests is that you can choose to do them. So it doesn't matter if they're obnoxious or terrible or boring or whatever, because you can choose to stop doing them. But this game doesn't let you do that per se. It effectively forces you to do them. And I say per se because it does give you an alternate method where you can just grind lemurs, either 9 knocks at a time, or I think it was 3 knocks at a time, and you need to get up to 100. And the 9 knocks at a times, those are rarer than the other ones. You actually gotta go look for those. Whereas the other ones, you can just you don't have to look so hard. And that's probably peak crazy for me. There was another game out there. I won't say the name, but there was another game out there that I played that forced me to do side quests, and that's a tried and true method of getting me to dislike the game far more than I either did or would have ever done so. Leave side quests as side quests. Don't force me to do side quests to progress the main story. And if you're going to do that, make the side quests relevant to the main story. I don't want to take Yufa's kids on a field trip to um, to get cheese or something like that, you know? Like, what does that have to do with the Grimwald Knox or the prison or uh, homunculus? You know, like it it drives me insane. And so that was my motivation for skipping them because the ones that I did, they were pointless. And I felt like there was maybe one at the very end, the infiltration mission with the guy with the owl, the shady dealer guy. That one, I was like, you know, the way this is going, this one probably could have been pretty cool. And maybe I should have checked out the dialogue first before skipping it. But the thing is I mentioned this in the past as well. If you're going to introduce side quests and you want the player to do the side quest, you should front load some of your best side quests at the beginning of the game. Because if you give me the worst side quest at the beginning of the game, I'm not going to want to do side quests later on in the game. So give me motivation to say, like, oh, I did this side quest at the beginning of the game. So there's potential for there to be good side quests later on. Whereas if you give me all the terrible side quests at the start, it's like, I'm not going to believe that there's going to be better side quests later on. And that's how I approached it this time. Cyberpunk 2077 has amazing side quests, and if the industry would like to copy them, I would appreciate it. Let's see. Not a fan of the Grimwald Knox events. They didn't feel very natural and can arguably be called tacked on. Fighting waves of enemies to protect an objective or destroying X crystals is a fine side event, but requiring these to progress the story isn't anywhere close to what I would want from a Ys game. I felt the same way in Ys 8 with the raids. Thankfully, in Ys 8, I think there were only like a couple that were required. And I guess in defense of this game, there were what, like 5 or 6 ish that were required. But like the Grimwald Knox stuff just didn't really feel like it had a reason, you know? And it was just, it's just not something that I felt was fun or exciting, I guess. But, you know, to each their own. Locking areas of the city around barriers that can't be bypassed without doing Grimwald Knox events is disappointing. I wasn't a big fan of this. I get the general aspect of this of, you know, like you want to ease the player in. You don't want to necessarily overwhelm them with a bunch of city and whatnot. That being said, like the areas that they like the beginning of the game, there's not much area to go with. You know, they could have opened that up to like another district or two. Um, and I mean, honestly, you could probably just open up the entire city. For me, the exploration, as mentioned before, was like one of the most enjoyable aspects of this game. Um, and that's actually what makes some games out there that have collectibles in them even more exciting because, Metroidvanias, for example, they have this system where you go through the map, and while you're going through the map, you see things that you can't get to yet. And so you're like, oh, I need to come back here and get this once I get the ability to get it. And I think this game could have approached their collectibles in a similar way, where it's like, give me access to the bulk, if not all, of the city, and just make things, you know, that I have to walk up walls to get and various things like that, where it would encourage me to go back to locations or get creative with some of my approaches. so that I can get those items, and it wouldn't necessarily feel overwhelmed. You can unlock all the shops as time goes by. Like you can gate them by story, sure, but like let the exploration just happen organically. It's even weirder because those barriers are specific to certain people. Adol is personally locked out of other sections of the city, but the other Monstrums are not, having theoretically completed the objectives to unlock them. Yet there is also barriers that unlock for the entire group during the full moon events. It's weird. Yeah, I don't like I there's a reason there, but I don't think it's necessarily consistent with the rest of the game. Um, it like mechanically it feels very weird to have these barriers here that other characters can just like walk by, and it's like why does me becoming a monstrum all of a sudden make it so that these barriers are here only for me, but then there's also barriers that are functionally identical to the barriers that I can't get past, but when those are unlocked, they're unlocked for everybody. Um, I realize that this is not necessarily something that the game can answer, but it is something that I feel like could have been addressed um, when crafting, like the exploration systems and things like that, and then a better explanation could have been given for it. Just change it. For combat, pretty enjoyable overall. I really liked Hawk's playstyle and skills. He has range and mobility that is very useful. I also liked Hawk's character. I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but Hawk is probably my favorite character in this game. He's like my spirit animal or something like that. He's a little sassy, and he has some qualities that I don't have and stuff like that. But everybody's different. For dungeons, none of the dungeons really stand out to me um, that I can think of. There are definitely some practical dungeon design issues with this game, 1,000%. But we won't get into that. For Cardinal Sins, we have a silent protagonist who sometimes talks. That's kind of weird. Backup party also earns less experience. I did not calculate how much less experience, but there is a reduction because the game said so. For miscellaneous sound and music, I found myself enjoying several tracks that were played throughout this game. I don't know how lengthy the soundtrack is, but it's definitely going to be added to my list for Level Up This playlist. And I'll be checking this one out for sure. There were some on here. I think I can make a beat out of them. We're gonna see. For voice acting, I think the voice acting was pretty solid. I don't think I had any complaints. I think some characters were a little bit more obnoxious than other characters, but that was more their personality and writing, and really had nothing to do with the voice performers themselves. For graphics, I think the graphics are fine. I don't necessarily care. Um, I played Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2, and those games look like PlayStation 2 games, maybe even like late PlayStation 1 games. Um, so like it it takes a very unique looking game for me to be like, I'm not really enjoying the visual style of this one. Is the game worth recommending? Um, that one's an interesting one. For me, you know what? I mean, it is interesting, but I don't think it's that difficult of an answer, actually. For me, I'm always uh, looking for sequels to give me more of the same, but improvements as well. So when I look at Ys 8, If I really liked that game, I feel like I would really like Ys 9. I do think there would be some issues with the transition. I do think some and a lot of my criticisms still hold true, but I think as an overall experience, if I liked Ys 8, I would like Ys 9. And I think in that aspect, if someone enjoys the 3D Ys games, I think they're going to enjoy Ys 9. It adds some extra layers that are not present in other Ys games, and in that it's pretty cool. So I would say it is worth recommending. I if I were to recommend a Ys game, I personally would not recommend any of the 3D Ys games, but that's just me. Ys Origin, all day, day. If the developer is watching, I kind of went through this with some of the other Ys games. The 3D Ys games, they just don't ignite the same spark that the 2D Ys games did for me, or the 2D sprites with 3D environments. Um, I can't necessarily pinpoint what about those games were more enjoyable, but the 3D games, I what I can say is they just don't have the same like play style and approach to problems, and they don't have the same uh uh we'll say like design space, I suppose. They, or at least they feel that way. So it's very difficult for me to kind of enjoy what they're doing, because it's like it's trying to do the 2D thing, but it's in 3D, and it just doesn't translate all too well. At least, like some of the earlier ones did. Um, I think, Ys 9 is definitely uh, uh, gotten well past the stride. I think a lot of what some people would say clunkiness. I hate the word clunkiness because it doesn't say anything. But um, like there's definitely some awkwardness in movement and kind of combat, and I think the camera is probably the one of the larger factors, because you see like you see more of what's going on, but you also see less in the sense. Um, in like the 2Ds games, you can you can pretty much see the telegraphed moves happening, and you can react to them as they're happening, because it's mostly like a top down camera look. But in this one, they lower the camera more to account for like you following the character in the third person view, and that allows for a lot of misdirection from enemies um and spell effects and things like that. So that's where some of, like, I guess the issues can be created. That said, again, I do think that if, like, the 3D games have certainly lost me as a fan of the franchise, but I also think that I'm in the minority here. I think a lot of people out there, Mr. JRPG included, like the Ys games and like how they've progressed. And I do think that the Ys games do get better as the entries go on. um, at least release date wise. So, um, going back to the stance of liking more of the same or wanting more of the same, I do think the Ys games are succeeding in that. I think they're adding new touches to the gameplay to progress it in a way that can still make it a fresh experience in comparison to the previous game, um, but also having that familiarity with it as well. So, I guess this is just a long-winded way of saying that I think the Ys games are no longer games for me, based off of the direction that they're going. But I think that they're succeeding for the core fan base, and I think because of that, you should probably take my thoughts on things with a grain of salt, except for the story stuff. Okay, like you can always clean up the story stuff and make it more interesting and elaborate on things and clean up some plot holes and things like that. Um, you know, all of that would always be an improvement. But do I want a sequel? I know there's a Ys 10 either out or coming out someday. And I will certainly say that I welcome more games in the gaming space. Uh, I just won't be playing Ys 10. That's I. It's seeing the direction that Ys Memories of Celceta to 7 to 8 to 9. I just don't. I can't see myself playing another Ys game after this. Um, and and no, I would not allow Ys another Ys game for viewer request. It is effectively banned. uh, Let me double check chat here before I haul things off. You can argue the Ys games pre 7 are much snappier and to the point. You enjoy the modern Ys games a lot, but can't deny the Trails isms been creeping into Ys. That, you know what? That is another thing. Um, I feel like it might have been a little disrespectful of me to say that the music in Ys 9 felt Trails esque in some areas. And like, I don't want to say that in a way that, like in a bad way. I like the Trails music, and obviously it's the same company that's making both things. But I think that was just like one of the first aspects that popped into my mind of like, oh, there's some crossover here, or like I can sense some crossover from Ys to Trails. And the way some of the story plays out, it harkens back to like how Trails games would want to reveal certain elements. Um, I can definitely see uh the Trails games creeping in. Maybe the story teams were maybe once separate, but now they're kind of merging together a little bit. Who knows what's going on over there. But I will definitely agree with you on that. Uh, I will say that the Ys games taking after the Trails games is to the detriment. I don't think it's a good thing to want to make those games more similar. I think they should stay separate, and their stories should approach um like in different directions. They should do different things because like sure they're different games and stuff like that as far as gameplay, but you know, like you don't want to be playing two games that have the same story beats. Uh, that that's just kind of annoying. Uh, what if it turns out ultra good? I so you know that expression, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, or fool you know the expression. Uh, I this has been the fourth opportunity for the Yeez games to surprise me in a way that could bring the franchise back into my good graces. And four times is a lot of tries. I originally gave it three tries. So you can see how uh, the game being ultra good is unlikely, but also probably not relevant to my desire to even, try it. Because let's look at it this way as well. Let's say Yeez 10 is really good. Okay. And then let's say Yeez 11 is not. Then what? Am I going to try Yeez 12 in hopes that it's actually really good? I don't want to go down that path. That's the path that I feel like I've been going with the Trails games. And let me tell you, I'm getting burned. So let's let's keep that in the Trails universe for now. We'll see what happens over there. Maybe you should gift me 10 and begrudgingly get me to play it. That would just be a waste of your money and my money, Mr. JRPG, because as I think I've explained to you, we would be going to war at that point. And you know, why would you spend $60 or why would you waste $60 for something that I will never play, you know? Uh, yeah. Yeah. Now you're trying to imagine a crossover? Oh boy. You enjoyed watching me stream it despite it feeling meager? How did you know what? I'll wrap up my thoughts here and just say, to repeat my overall thoughts, I was not a fan of this game. In a great many ways, I think the story falls flat for me. I think a lot of the characters don't necessarily um, make the experience any better, except for Credo. Credo was cool. I think Aprilis was cool too, but she was plot device of caginess. Um, and I think the general gameplay was pretty solid. I think the combat was pretty solid. But just a lot of the mechanics really got in the way for me, and a lot of the implementation of those mechanics. So that's gonna wrap it up for my thoughts here. And yeah. Oh, actually, before I do that, I should probably save during my thoughts, huh? 30 hours, a little bit less than 30 hours. It was pretty good. It's pretty good. Pretty good. Do we get a new title screen? We do. All right, there's my achievement. All right, this is where I'm going to end my thoughts.